Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start our Sunday Gita class with some mantras first. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Gratitam Puran Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamrit Varshine Bhagavati Ashtadashadhyayane Amb Tvam Anusandhame Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshine नमो अस्तु ते व्यास विशाल बुद्धे फुल अरविंद आयत पत्र नेत्र येन तव्या भारत तैल पूर्णः प्रज्वलितो ज्ञानमय प्रदीपः प्रपन्न पारिजाताये तोत्र वेत्र एकपाने ज्ञान मुद्राये कृष्णाय गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोगता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत वसुदेव सुतम देवम कंस चानूरमर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगत गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तथा जयद्रथ चला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्य ग्रावती कृपेन वाहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोरमकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तने सोतीर्णा खलु पांडवै रन नदी कैवर्तका केशवा पाराशरे वत्सरोजमलम गीता अर्थगंधोटकम नानाख्यान केसरम हरि कथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षटपद रह रह पे पिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकम करोति वाचालम पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरम यत्कृपातमहं वंदे परमानंद माधवम यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यस्तवे वेदै साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदै गायन्ति यम सामका ध्यानवस्थित तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुसुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. In this class we are trying to understand chapter number 16, Dev Asur Sampat Vibhaga. And in the first three verses, Lord Krishna has enumerated the divine qualities. Okay, so the positive qualities. Now from verse number 4.
મારી ચાય બંધ કરી મને ગાડી આપો છો બેટા મગમાં ચાય.
So starting from verse number 4 is a description of the demonic qualities, Asuric. So Dev and Asur, positive and the negative. So let's look at verse number 4. You can open your books. Dambh darap abhimanacha क्रोधः पारुष्यम एव च अज्ञानम च अभिजातस्य पार्थ संपदम आसुरीम. Dambh means hypocrisy. Darap, arrogance. Abhiman, self-conceit. Cha means and, krodh means wrath. Parushyam, harshness. Ev means even, cha means and. The second line, agyanam, ignorance. Cha means and, abhijatasya, of the form. Parth, that is Arjun. Sampadam, a state. Asurim, demonic. So Lord Krishna is saying that hypocrisy, arrogance, and self-conceit, anger, and also harshness and ignorance belong to one who is born or Parth for a demonic state. So it's like a demonic nature or demonic value. To know these dark qualities should be a sufficient warning for all of us what we must avoid. We must carefully weed out from our mental composition these negativities. Dambh, the hypocrisy, what is that? Pretending to be righteous, but living unrighteous ways of life. That is a dambh. It's almost like a superficial glow of goodness and purity or sincerity. But you are covering with all this the deadly motives and ugly intentions. So that means there is not a harmony between the thoughts and the actions of the words. Dhamma, hypocrisy. The second word over here is darpa, arrogance. Arrogance is endless pride of learning or of wealth or of social status or even family connections. I know such and such. This really gives an individual a kind of insufferable uppishness. Looking at the world through self-deluding medium and lives in a world of imagined self-importance. That's called dharma, thinking that I am so important. And naturally, this kind of a person will become highly self-conceited. That's abhiman. One leads to the other. Dambha, darp, and ultimately abhiman. And when such a self-conceited, arrogant hypocrite looks at the world around him and finds that the world's estimate of him is totally different from his own estimate of himself, he will revolt within, and then ultimately this comes into the words also, actions also, and it becomes a wrath. That's what this krodh is. Krodh at everything around him. Krodh. This kind of an individual gets worked up with anger in his speech, action. And then ultimately what happens with this kind of a personality, he becomes a disconcerting insolence. That's what called parishe, harsh personality. Parushe. So such arrogance, self-conceit, wrath, and insolence arise from his own self-delusion. That's agyan. This ignorance of oneself and one's own relationship with the things and beings around. These are like a forces. Forces, he just revolts against the environment wherever he lives. So these people are termed here by Lord Krishna as the Asurs, diabolically fallen. Dambh, darp, abhiman, krodh, parushim, agyan. And the effects of the Asuri nature and the Devi nature, that is explained in the next verse by Lord Krishna. He's going to go into the Asuri nature in detail later on, but first he's just trying to tell us over here the consequences of these natures. Verse number 5. Devi Sampat Vimokshai Nibandhai Asuri Mata Ma Shuch Sampadam Devim Abhijata Asi Pandava. Devi, divine, Sampat, wealth or estate, Vimokshai, for liberation, Nibandhai, for bondage, Asuri, the demonic, Mata, is deemed. Ma Shucha, Ma means not, Shucha means grieve. Sampadam, estate, Devim, the divine, Abhijata, born for, Asi, you are, Pandav, that is Arjuna. See, all these 5 brothers, their father's name was Pandu. So that's why they are called Pandava, 5 brothers. The divine nature is deemed for liberation, the demonic for bondage. Grieve not, O Pandav, you are born with divine qualities. Because hearing these strong enumeration of the qualities of good and bad both, naturally a very sincere student of Gita will feel a despair, not knowing whether he himself belongs to the divine or the demonic nature. So Arjun must have felt the same despair. And Lord Krishna, he read it on his face. And that's why he said, grieve not, O Pandav, you are born of the divine nature. It's almost like encouraging a young student or a young kid. No, you are a good person. Encouragement. So both the ethical beauties and the non-ethical ugliness are pointed here for the purpose of sending the good to an eternal heaven and damning the vicious to a perpetual hell. And perpetual hell is the bondage. Bondage. Ethical virtues are the intelligent ways of reviving our exhausted energies and fatigued spirit to live. So the divine estate leads to release and the devilish to bondage. Very clearly he is telling us. Developing good qualities and eliminating the bad ones is an integral part of sadhana. That's the promise we make to ourselves, that we will get rid of the bad qualities and cultivate the good qualities. So that's why we have to know which one is bad and which one is good. Without knowing in detail, how will we know which qualities to discard and which one to cultivate? A useful technique that helps us to do all this, removing our weaknesses and developing virtues, is a maintenance of a personal diary also. Writing them down every day, end of the day. Where did I slip? And where did I do a good deed? We need that encouragement also. But we should definitely not get sentimental and desperate or exhaust ourselves or have a self-pity or self-condemnation, because all that is a psychological malady. Because if we are suffering from it, we can never discover ourselves enough energy to have the confidence to walk on this path. The good contaminated by weakness and ignorance is the evil. And the evil, when cured of ignorance itself, becomes the good. It's almost like a glass covered with the dust. Glass is clean. It's only the dust is on it. And we got to wipe the dust or scrub the dust to look at the glass. That's how we are. In essence, we are divine. Because essence of all of us is only the soul, which is part of God. We got to just wipe out this demonic nature of ours. To wipe it clean is to bring forth from it more clarity and light for the reflection. So remember, according to this Vedic philosophy, a diabolically fallen has also the same infinite light of the pure wisdom, but extremely dimmed by its own false values and wrong concepts. And this is what he's trying to make us understand. So we should not despair, we should not feel discouraged, but we should definitely know what is the right path, and we ourselves got to walk on this path. So that's why in a detailed he told us what the divine qualities are, and now he is going to tell us what the demonic qualities do, what to avoid. But before he does that, in the verse number 6, he continues that Dvau bhut sarge loke asmin devaha asura evcha deva vistarashaha proktaha asuram partha me shrinu. Dvau, two, bhut sarge, types of beings, loke, in the world, asmin, this, dev, the divine, asur, demonic, ev means even, cha means and. Daiva, the divine, Vistrashaha, at length. In Hindi, there's a word Vistar. So it's the same word, Vistrasha. Proktaha has been described. Asuram, demonic, Parth, that's Arjun. Me means from me, Shrinu, here. So Lord Krishna is saying that there are two types of beings in this world, the divine and the demonic. The divine have been described at length. Hear from me, O Parth, of the demonic. We know that in all religious textbooks of the world, the positive qualities of goodness and the righteousness are glorified. But they rarely paint exhaustively the negative tendency of a devilish personality. We have to be aware of the negative tendency in our own personality structure and become consciously disgusted with those vulgar urges. That's the only way we can eradicate such wrong tendencies. If we are not familiar with it, how would we know that we need to clean out these impurities from us? We have to be aware of our weaknesses. Human urges are always typical. And both the good and the bad are expressions of our heart. Bad is only good misconstrued. So we got to understand in detail. That's why Lord Krishna has spent so much effort in defining the good for us first, and then now we'll see the bad also. Let's look at it. The verse number 7. That's where he's starting in detail the demonic nature also. Pravritim cha nivritim cha jana na vidu asura na shaucham na api cha achara na satyam teshu vidyate. Pravritim, action. Cha means and, nivritim, action. Cha means and, janaha, men. Na means not, vidu no, asura, the demonic. Na shocham, not purity. Na api, not also. Cha means and, achara, right conduct. Na satyam, not truth. Teshu, in them, vidyate, is. The demonic know not what to do and what to refrain from. Neither purity, nor right conduct, nor truth is found in them. So that means the demonic nature is confused about what is right and what is wrong, what to do, what not to do, what is truth, what is not truth. So neither is purity found in them. It could be the outer cleanliness also, because we know that outer cleanliness is a large measure, a reflection of our inner condition. A disciplined person with education and culture also will maintain a systematic order and cleanliness around him or her. And a person who is incapable of deciding the actions to be pursued, as well as those to be avoided, has no harmony within, no inner purity or outer cleanliness, which is called shauch. Because if the mind is indisciplined, outward behaviors are nothing but expressions of the mind. Our actions, the starting place is the thoughts, which is the mind. And a person who is confused about action and inaction, what to do and what not to do, a person who has no purity or external cleanliness, and a person who fails in good conduct, and conduct is our behavior towards others also, cannot maintain truthfulness in his words. Na satyam teshu vidyate. This is like a logical conclusion that such a person must necessarily be untruthful in words. Not because he is deliberately pursuing dishonesty, but because by temperament he is incapacitated to be honest. Doesn't even know that he's lying, doesn't even know that there's not a harmony within his words and actions and thoughts. We are recognizing the picture of an utterly skeptical materialist who looks at life from his own limited intellectual standpoint in these words. Naturally, this person will fail to recognize any final purpose or permanent substratum for all these illogical happenings around him. And this is what na satyam teshu vidyate means. And from this kind of a person's viewpoint of life and the world around him is explained in the next verse. Verse number 8. Asatyam apratishtam te jagat ahu anishram apraspar sambhutam kim anyat kam hetukam. Asatyam, without truth. Apratishtam, without basis, like a moral basis. Te means they, Jagat, the world, Ahu, say, Anishwaram. See, Ishwar is the God, Anishwar, without a God. Apraspar sambhutam, brought about by mutual union. Kim means what? Anyat, else. Kam hetukam, with lust for its cause. They say, so these demonic personalities he's talking about, the universe is without truth, without moral basis, without a God, brought about by mutual union with the lust for its cause. They say, what else? Kim anyat? Without truth, asatyam. Even when they are very scientific in their observations and analysis, they fail to recognize the truth that upholds the universe. Because they do recognize the change. They admit the change is a relative phenomena, because without a changeless, constant foundation, change cannot take place. So without a screen, steady and motionless, a running film cannot be projected. We all know that. So they do look at that. They do recognize that. Because even when we look at the flow of the water in the river, there has to be a constant bed underneath. So the ever-changing universe cannot give us a constant appearance without its having a steady and changeless foundation. So this eternal and unchanging reality behind the ever-changing universe is called the truth. But they don't believe that. According to the demonic nature, the universe is without truth, asatyam. And then they say there's no God, anishwaram. If there be no substratum, is there a commanding intelligence that orders, regulates, determines, guides the happenings in the world? According to these personalities, there's no such director of events. No architect of happenings, there's no creator, no sustainer. There are two ways of refraining from immoral behavior. Number one is through the exercise of willpower. I want to walk on the right path. I want to do good. Or the second way, it could be due to fear of God. But if you don't believe in God, you will keep on doing the wrong thing. And majority of people desist from doing wrong due to the fear of punishment. We all notice that when we are driving, the moment a police car is spotted, everybody slows down. The fear of getting caught and getting a ticket. Immediately we slow down. If we believe in God out of fear of his law, because this law of karma is a law of God, we will refrain from immoral behavior. But if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in the truth, we just keep on doing whatever we want to do. And then these personalities say, oh, prosper sambhutam, kam hetukam. They say the entire universe of beings and things is formed only as a result of mutual combination of great elements. And the sole ruling factor that determines creation is a chance, or there's an urge, lustful urge, by which beings are born. They say it's nothing but lust. This is what their philosophy is. So this is a demonic nature he's talking about. And after describing the point of view of the pure demonic person, Lord Krishna is sympathizing with such people and their deeds in the next one. Verse number 9. Etam drishtim avashtbhaya nasht atmanah alpabuddhya prabhavanti ugra karmanah kashaya jagat ahita. Etam, this, drishtim, view, avashtbhaya, holding, nasht atmana, ruined souls, alpabuddhya, of small intellect, prabhavanti, come forth, ugra karmana, of fierce deeds, kashai, for its destruction, jagat, of the world, ahita, enemies. Holding this view, so whatever he has been talking about of the demonic nature, holding this view, these ruined souls of small intellect and fierce deeds come forth as the enemies of the world for its destruction. So holding this view, holding the view that the world has no substratum, that there's no controlling power, and that the world continues to exist and procreate by itself. It's like a giving full vent to their animal nature, they say. It will only achieve restlessness, strife, disaster, destruction for itself. Then he mentions the ruined souls, Nashta Atmana. A balanced personality can be only for that individual who has to begin with a clear conception and a correct judgment of himself. When we are working with our ignorance, we don't have the clarity. Naturally, this person will behave as though he is an animal, insulting the divine status of his own evolution. So, ruined souls. So, it's not that the soul is ruined, but the personality layers have gotten ruined. Okay, try to understand that in its with the right meaning. A small intellect, because of the small intellect, they have brought themselves down to that level. Because once an individual refuses to recognize the divine presence of truth, that person will function in life as a self-centered, selfish entity, endlessly striving to eke out his own personal satisfaction from the material world. So this person is highly selfish, seeking complete fulfillment in the gratification of his sensual urges. He strives hard, definitely, but discovers only disappointments. Because there's a burning hunger in him. And that's how he feels the sense of defeat also. So that's why Lord Krishna, in his infinite kindness, sympathizes with such a person. And he says these are the people with a small intellect. Alpa buddhya. Even though the intellect is there, but they are not using it. They have not expanded their horizon. And because of that intellect, because intellect decides what to do, what not to do, their deeds are fierce. Because when a person has lost his faith in higher reality, the Satyam, he becomes fierce in all levels of his expression. It's like if words become fierce, the actions become fierce. Prompted by his selfish urges to seek and discover his fulfillment in life, he will ultimately bring about irrecoverable disasters to his era. Historically, we see that. Not only historically, even today, we can see that what's happening in the world. But in history, definitely, humankind has repeatedly witnessed these dictators, emperors like Hitler and Stalin, etc., who were motivated by their perverse views of the truth and brought about suffering and devastation to the world. They do not recognize the truth. They don't see the substratum, they don't see the truth which is holding this all up. And that's why, as human beings, no matter technologically how much we have advanced, we keep on plunging the world into a bloody mire of disastrous wars. And what are the motives of this kind of a person's or personality or people in everyday life? That's what he's has described in verse number 10. Kamam ashrite dushparam, dambh man madanvata, mohat grihitvaha asadgrahan pravartante ashuchivrata. Kamam, desire. Ashrite, abiding in. Dushparam, insatiable. Dambh, we learned in few verses before, is hypocrisy. Man is pride. Mad means arrogance. So full of hypocrisy, pride, and arrogance. Mohat, through delusion. Grihitva, having held. Asadgrahan, evil ideas. Pravratante, they work. Ashuchi vrata. See, Shuchi is pure, Ashuchi is impure. See, with impure resolves. Vrat is resolve. So with impure resolves, filled with insatiable desires, full of hypocrisy, pride and arrogance, holding evil ideas, through delusion, they work with impure resolve. So the gruesome ugliness of the inner nature in such a person. Because this person struts about in the fields of his achievement, given to desires. That means attracted to the fleeting pleasures of sense objects. This person's intellect becomes mean, selfish, and arrogant. So this person disregards the injunctions of the scriptures and go contrary to what is proper and truthful. So it starts with the given to desires, kamam. See, activities are not at all possible unless they are instigated by desires. That's where it starts. And to sustain life only for the satisfaction of desires is unintelligent. Because what happens to our desires? The worldly desires, they keep on multiplying themselves as we go on satisfying them. The more we satisfy, if you don't use our discriminative power, they keep on increasing. It's almost like pouring a ghee into the fire. One after the another. Very hard to please. So that's why he says, dushparam. Kamam ashrite dushparam. So that means filled with insatiable desires. When a person uses his intelligence, abilities, knowledge, could naturally bring about an endless stream of disturbances in and around him. And that's where that when the desires get fulfilled, sure, there's a lot of arrogance. And remember, desire is an expression of the ego. When the seeker seeks a permanent satisfaction and infinite fulfillment through sense enjoyment, because individual is deluded in the misconception of his ego vanity. And the negative tendencies such as hypocrisy, conceit, and arrogance, they would naturally rise up. And the goodness in that person gets mothered. And a person wants to just strive to satisfy the unending demands of his own desires. So according to Lord Krishna, this is a Asuri nature. Then he says they are victims of delusion, mohat. Because desires cannot come to the all fulfilled. Desires can come only to one who fails to fear his own infinitude. A person who has understood I am the Atma, nothing but the Paramatma, desires start to go down. But if we have not understood that, we did not experience it, we will try to find happiness and bliss only in the material world. So, forgetting our own divine nature in our identification with the unreal things and values of life, a person develops a hunger to enjoy, but looking only outwardly. That's how desires keep on multiplying. And if the desires are so many, and with the mind is already not clean, so they act with unclean resolve. Ashuchi vrata. So this is like a mental biography of the Asura in a very beautiful sequence, actually. Because over here, Lord Krishna says the ego desperately struggling to gain inner peace, but ignoring all the noble values of life, didn't want to become selfless, didn't want to believe into the truth, the substratum. And this person enters into the field of activity shamelessly, intolerant, inconsiderate, and even brutal. And that's what that Parushyam word he used before. And this Asuric nature of a person is that a person feels like is a drunk with the passion. It's almost like an opiated with his own desires. And he works in the world as a maniac. They act with unclean resolve. With the right way I can't get it, I'm going to just get it any way I can. So this picture, viewed microcosmically, shows the materialist or the Asuric or Asura building his life upon the restless waves of desires tossed in the mind. Because where are the desires? They are in the mind, in the subtle personality of ours. More the desires, more the actions we do. And if we cannot fulfill the desires with the right means, this kind of a personality will not mind doing the wrong way. That's what Ashuchi Vrata means. Ashuchi Vrata. What happened to a person who lives a life like this? Countless desires, no substratum, no purity, no truth. What happens? That's what he's mentioning. It's hard to believe that this was written before Kali Yuga started. Looks like somebody in today's world has written this Bhagavad Gita. He says, Chintam aprimeyam cha pralye antham upashrita kam upbhog parmaha etavat iti nishchita. Chintam, the worries, aparimeyam, unmeasurable, that you can't even measure. Cha means and, pralyantam, ending only with death. Upashrita, refused in. Kam upbhog parma, regarding gratification of lust as their highest aim. Etavat, that is all. Iti means thus, nishchita, feeling sure. Giving themselves over to immeasurable care. Ending only with the death. Regarding great gratification of lust as their highest aim, and feeling sure that that is all. That means That is all that matters. Fulfillment of the worldly desires. Having this, doing that. Their desires for material attainments torment them. That's what chinta means. And they undertake enormous schemes to fulfill their aspirations. So we'll end today's class here. We'll start looking at in detail from this verse number 11 next Sunday. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.